Well, folks, it looks like you've made it to the last episode of Soul Talk. Well done, congratulations. This time, Belinda's going to be talking about depression. And again, this is a topic that I know well. For me, my own journey with depression was so disorientating. It was like I didn't know how to be myself anymore, and I wondered if I'd ever find my way out of it. The great news for me and my family is that I did. In this final episode, Belinda is going to give you plenty of great ideas on how to head in that direction too. But before we begin, I just want to say that if you've gotten anything good out of this free resource, then please do what you can to help it go viral. Tell your pastors and ministers about it. Recommend it to other groups and to friends. Talk about it on social media. We want it to reach as many people as possible, so please help us out by promoting it. Lastly, if you're wondering how to go on with this material in your groups or just by yourself, then the two best websites to check out are soultour.info and livingwisdom.co.nz. Both of these websites have details about courses you can go on and resources you can buy that deal with a wide range of issues. Did you know that Belinda isn't just a counsellor? She's also an author who's written 9 action-adventure novels like this one that teach mental and emotional health issues. I mean, how cool is that? That you can be entertained and learn a whole bunch about mental and emotional health. Well, that's all from me. Belinda will be up soon. But first, it's time to use your Soul Talk cards. Kia ora.
Welcome to our 4th and final week of Soul Talk. This week we're going to be taking a look at depression. Depression has actually been called the common cold of Western mental illness, and I think it's understandable why when you look at the statistics. Globally, it's estimated that 350 million people struggle with depression. Let's start by taking a look at what depression is. Depression is described by many as a feeling of gloom or sadness. In fact, the word depression literally means to move something from a higher position to a lower level, which is why we often say we're feeling low when we feel depressed. Depression is not just in the mind, but it's experienced throughout the whole body, including central nervous system, gastric, muscular, heart or respiratory problems. It can also manifest as anger, headaches, backaches, fatigue, irritability or hypersensitivity. It can be on a continuum from mild sadness to severe dejection or despair.
So my depression developed probably over 12 months. So we'd just started a new job. We were helping plant a church at the same time, which is greatest thing ever, but a lot of work. And we just had a new addition to our family as well. So, and just over time, all of those things, the energy to do those things and the squeeze on all things in my life, I just lost my joy over about a 12-month period. I remember just having a shower one day and I just had this, I don't know if I was talking to God or whatever, but I was like, man, I don't have much joy in my life at the moment. And then I knew, I was like, oh, okay. Had the conversation with my wife. That's not what life's meant to look like.
My experience of depression has been interesting because it happened twice. I'm in my 30s and I've had quite serious depression twice. I love food and fancy coffee and wine, and I love to cook. I love to sing. I was involved in a worship band at church. I love connecting with my friends. I love having coffee with people. I love people. None of those things were important to me anymore. Suddenly I didn't care about anything, and I I missed those things. It was like they were all my friend and I missed them. So there was a significant feeling of grief and loss and loneliness, very lonely. I longed for things to be the way they were. I was also very ashamed of it. I didn't want to be the person with depression. I didn't like to talk about it. I didn't want to tell people that I was sad because it wasn't very fun. I wanted to be a fun person. So yeah, I hid it a lot, and so it was very secret. My close friends knew I was down, but they didn't know how serious it was.
At the age of 16, I remember really struggling at that stage of my life with a sense of where was my life heading, what was the direction for my future, feeling quite hopeless. I had an older brother and I felt that I always had to measure up to him, and you know, my parents didn't do it intentionally, but when he would make a stuff up or a mistake, there was kind of that language of you better not do the same thing. And so just that pressure to perform and that pressure to get things right. And I'm the oldest of 5 girls, so setting a good example for my siblings, and I just felt this intense pressure, and it got to a point where I wanted to end my life. So one night I did attempt to end my life. My mum found me and she took me to the doctors, and so grateful for that. But at the time it was a pretty hard season to walk through. Came out of that, I was studying at Otago University, and I remember, I don't remember how I kind of spiraled into it, but probably similar, probably just that sense of pressure and knowing my parents had paid all this money for me to go to university and get a degree. I was struggling with friendships. I'd had a relationship with a boyfriend end, and again just found myself spiraling into quite a dark place, quite a low place. I remember vividly having a 3-day window where I literally didn't stop crying for 3 days because I just couldn't see any way forward and I couldn't see any hope for my future.
Now, over the years, I've read dozens of books and articles on depression, but by far the most useful material I've ever found is the model developed by Nelson-based counsellor David Riddell. What he's done is identified 6 different types of depression, each with their own antidotes. So we're going to take a look at those. The first 2 types relate to things you've been through in your past. The second type are about things that are going on right now for you in your present. One relates to how you see your future, and the last one is biochemical. The first type of depression we're going to look at is one that relates to your past, and it's called bitter depression. So this is when you have strong negative emotions like anger, shame, regret, guilt, grief, self-hatred, and instead of dealing with them, you have bottled them up. You have buried them down deep and they have turned into depression. The Bible does not hide people's true selves, so I'm not really sure why we do. Consider this. Moses was a murderer. Hosea's wife was a prostitute. Noah got drunk. Jonah was a racist. Jacob was a liar. John deserted Paul. Elijah burned out. Jeremiah was depressed and suicidal. And let's not even get started on King David, who lusted after Bathsheba, had an affair with her, and then killed her husband off. The Bible does not hide people's true selves, and nor should we. If we want to get free of this type of depression, we have to be honest about our pain so that we can heal. The second type of depression that relates to things we've been through in our past is called sad depression, and it's caused by a lack of nurture. So we end up with this kind of depression when we haven't got the nurture we've needed growing up for some reason. Maybe our parents were depressed. Maybe one of both were struggling with anxiety themselves. Maybe there was neglect or abuse. Maybe our parents weren't nurtured themselves, so they don't know how to nurture us well. Whatever the case, it's like there's still a child inside looking for nurture, looking for affection, looking for what it didn't get. Now, the solution to this one's a little strange, but what you actually need to do to heal from this type of depression is re-nurture or re-parent yourself. So what does that look like? Here's some suggestions. First of all, we learn to encourage ourselves. We learn to give ourselves praise, celebrate our accomplishments, build ourselves up. Secondly, we learn to be kinder to ourselves. If you had a critical parent, you probably have a critical voice inside your head beating you up when you mess up. Now, instead of listening to that, you've got to learn to reassure yourself when things go wrong, when you mess up. Thirdly, learn to look after yourself physically. Develop the skills that perhaps you weren't nurtured into. Learn how to pay taxes and bills, how to cook, how to clean, how to do different sports and activities. Gain confidence if your parents haven't given you confidence. Fourthly, if you were given negative labels by your parents, then you need to challenge them. Perhaps you need some redefining moments to start seeing yourself in a different light. Number 5 is create some opportunities to try new things, to gain confidence in your abilities. One of the things a parent is meant to do is give their child lots of experiences so that through those experiences they gain confidence in themselves and their own ability to be an adult. Number 6, grieve what you missed out on. We've already talked about grief, so you know how to do it, but grieve the things you missed out on as a way to recover. And finally, and most importantly, make sure you have plenty of support during this process. I hope what you're hearing as we go through these types of depression is that you don't have to be a counsellor or a professional to help someone through depression. If someone you know and love is going through sad depression, then you can be part of their re-nurturing process. You can walk alongside them, encourage them, build them up, encourage them to do that for themselves. Now, the third type of depression, which is the first one to relate to the present, is actually exhausted depression caused by burnout. We looked at that in week 1, but just to remind you, burnout is about running out of energy. It's about having more things in your life that drain you than energize you. And the way to get healed from it is gradually, slowly but surely shift the balance so that you are decreasing the things that drain you and you are increasing the things that energize you over time. The fourth type of depression, which also relates to what's going on in your present, is stuck depression. And this occurs when we are trapped in some kind of dilemma. Maybe we're stuck between 2 options, maybe we're stuck between 2 beliefs. Whatever the case, we don't know how to move forward and we feel powerless to change anything. Now, perhaps you grew up in a family that didn't teach you how to problem solve. When things went wrong, your parents felt stuck. And so you have learned to see yourself as powerless. Whatever the case, for some reason, the person in stuck depression feels trapped and their mind hates it. Now, when someone comes to see me in this kind of depression, the first thing I need to know is, where are they stuck? Are there family issues going on and they don't know how to fix them? Are they not happy in their relationship but they're afraid to be single? Is it that they cannot choose between this career or that career? Do they actually want to retrain but they don't believe they're good enough for the job that they really want? Where are they stuck? Now, once we've identified where they're stuck, the second step is to figure out what a third option is. The person who's in stuck depression is only seeing this option or this option. Their eyes need to be open to see that there are more options than that available to them. For example, recently I had a young guy come and see me for counselling because he was in stuck depression. He had a very prestigious, well-paid job, but he was miserable. Now, we threw options around and he left with some to try out. I met his wife about 6 months later and she said to me, "Thank you. You got my husband out of his depression." And I said, "That's great. What's he doing now?" And she said, "He's actually left his job and he's retraining in a field that we're both excited about." So this is the answer to this type of depression. We need to find a way through. We need another option. The fifth type of depression relates to how we see the future. It's called meaningless depression, and it's about our great core emotional need for progress, the need that every human being has. You know, Proverbs 29 verse 18 says, "For lack of vision the people perish." In fact, depression is 3 times more prevalent amongst the unemployed, and I would say some of the time we could put it down to this type of depression. Although, to be honest, you can have this type of depression even when you're employed. I know that for a fact because this was one of the many types of depression I had. I had 12 years working in jobs that weren't really me, and it just wore me down, and I spent a lot of time saying, what is the point of my life? It wasn't until I discovered the joy of sharing and teaching mental health that that depression lifted. So that's what we need to get free of this type of depression. We need to get a vision. We need a purpose, a cause. Personally, I believe that we have a 3-fold purpose on earth. First and foremost, I believe we are here to love and to know God. You know, He created us for that purpose. Secondly, I believe we're to love one another. We are to bless and encourage and serve and support one another. But thirdly, there are things that we are uniquely wired to do that nobody else can do as well as we can. And that will shape the way we do the first two things. I mean, you may be interested to know that the probability of having the same top 10 strengths, and I'm talking about StrengthsFinder here, the same top 10 strengths in the same order as anybody else is 1 in 443 billion. You are very unique. So hopefully this will be inspiring you to look for your purpose in life. Now, the final cause of depression is biochemical depression. If you've been reading between the lines, you've worked out that the other types of depression are not a cause in themselves. They're a symptom that something else is going wrong. Something is wrong with your thinking or your emotions. Now, with biochemical depression, there's a number of possible causes, including fluctuating serotonin levels, which is the neurotransmitter that modulates your moods and emotions. It might be that your thyroid is playing up. It might be that you're lacking zinc or iron in your diet. It could be due to insufficient sunlight, which is seasonal affective disorder. It could be that you have a low blood sugar count because you're eating the wrong kind of food or you're not eating enough, which is the case for anorexics. For girls, it could be an estrogen or progesterone imbalance due to pregnancy, menstruation, or menopause. It could be a tropical disease has had an impact. It could be hypoglycemia, brain injuries, food allergies. As you can see, there are many different potential causes for this. And the way to know if the type of depression you're experiencing is purely biochemical is that you can't explain it by your thinking. You're cycling into it, and yet your thinking is actually pretty healthy. Now, this is certainly a type of depression where you'd want to see a doctor. There's a lot of medical help out there, and medication can be great because it can level out your emotions to make you stable enough to face the things that you need to face. However, medication will not teach your brain the things it needs to know. If you have thoughts rolling around in your mind like, I'm inadequate, I'm not good enough, nobody likes me, I'm a failure, I'll never get there, then medication will not fix that. So that's why even if someone is on medication, I always like to encourage them to consider getting counselling, surrounding themselves with great support and getting prayer for healing as well.
It wasn't straight away that I did something about it, because my first thought was, expletive, what am I going to do? There's not a... Actually, my first thought was, oh man, this is like years of counselling. That's what I thought. And I was like, man, I just don't want to do that. I don't have can't be stuffed for starters. I'm going to spend my money on other stuff that's better than counselling. So that was what stopped me from actually doing it, which is ridiculously sad, but that's what stopped me from doing anything about it initially. It was actually quite enabling or freeing for me, even naming it, and the name didn't matter, but saying, well, this makes sense. 1 + 1 = 2, and it's not just that there's no joy in my life. There's these steps that have led to this place. I need to provide for the family, but how I provide for the family or what that looks like doesn't have to be in this space. It could be somewhere else. That was actually quite liberating for me because it gave me options.
So I had a handful of different things that really helped, and both times they were quite significantly different. The first time I was very lonely, sad and angry, and I had to learn how to self-nurture, and so I was given beautiful tools to help to talk to my inner child, and I taught myself to talk to little Danae, and I would picture little Danae, and I would nurture her and encourage her and love her as if she were a child. It was deeply healing and significantly beautiful. And it did feel odd at the beginning, but it became natural, and I catch myself to this day saying, oh, good girl. So yeah, that's really cool. Secondly, I had to learn to love myself and accept myself, and that came about because I began to understand how much God loves me, and I also learned that my worth doesn't come from what people think of me. My worth comes from God, and that I don't have to do anything for Him to love me. I can breathe, and that's enough. So that took a few years really of self-talk, answering my feelings with truths. So I would set myself truths And when I had a feeling, I would say, no, Danae, but the truth is, because I believed that I needed to retrain my brain from habitual sadness and into habitual joy, which I experience now and is hugely exciting.
I remember ringing Mum, and I could just hear how helpless my mum sounded because she was at an opposite end of the country to me. But she got some things in place, got the wheels in motion for me to go and talk to the Dean of the Hall of Residence that I was staying at. Sat down with him and his wife, and they just listened and encouraged me. Then they organised for me to have some counselling with the Student Nursing Association through the university, and that was really helpful. And just through that, being reminded of making sure I had some good emotional incomings coming into my life, because sometimes when you're studying, all you see is just textbooks and assignments, and you can get yourself stuck into a bit of a rut, but remembering to keep the balance. So I started making sure I was getting to the gym and eating healthy and spending time with friends and just getting some of those good incomings back in. And that certainly helped me through that season. And then it was only the very next year at university that that God got a hold of my life and I became a Christian. And so that definitely helped turn things around as well, because all of a sudden I did have hope for my future, and I did know that there was a great plan and purpose for my life.
Well, I hope it's been encouraging to you to get a better understanding of depression. You know, I find when people come to see me and say they're depressed, they're struggling with depression, generally they're struggling with more than one type. So even if you just start by identifying which of the types of depression you're dealing with, then you've got a beginning place and you know how to move forward. My prayer for you is that you won't stop here, that you will keep going, keep looking for answers, that you will use the feelings and needs cards. They're not just for Soul Talk, keep using them, that you will get support, that you will open up to people, that you will share more with your home group, that you will pray, maybe even go to counselling if you've identified some issues that you need help with. Let me pray for you one last time. Lord, I thank you so much that your desire is for us to live an abundant life, that we weren't born with these things, these issues of anxiety, depression, burnout, grief, that somewhere along the way we developed them, which means that we can unlearn them, we can deal with them and get through them, and that your heart is to accompany us and support us and encourage us and equip us on that journey. So for everyone that's been listening to this resource over the last wee while, we ask for your support and your love and your comfort to rest upon them as they move forward into greater freedom. Amen.